Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahushai, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahushai, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahushai. All praise, honor, and infinite glory goes to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Kakadash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of great millstone Willl, and citations to elect that push the truth in all sincerity. Sincere shalom to the hopeful elect that keeps her garments clean and does the will of Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai. The water Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai for allowing me to do another video. Today's video I want to talk about his words were smoother than oil. Esau will put hell. Esau is looking to punish you, okay, if you do not get the jab up, okay? He's looking to punish you. Now he's talking about how can we really make it mandatory? Is it possible to really, make this a mandatory thing? And we already know that he's going to continue to push things where it's basically mandatory, where it's going to be mandatory. You see? He's already on that path, So we're going to watch this video, okay? There's a key point that I want to bring out, okay? Which is really proving that he's, starting to make it mandatory, all right? I got one precept and that'll be the end of the video. All right, so let's begin.
Record numbers of Americans are getting vaccinated against the coronavirus.
The U.S., the most vaccinated large nation in the world.
Dozens of countries are now working to vaccinate their populations in an effort to end the global pandemic.
President Biden says that by the end of his first 100 days, the United States is aiming to have administered 200 million doses. And by May 2021, every American adult who wants one will be eligible to get in line for a shot.
Yeah, so they're looking to really force this. Okay, what do I mean by that? Okay, Esau, he's really working fast, okay? Really trying to, put out his plan. He really wants to make sure, that his plan goes out, okay? May 1st, he believes that, hey, it's that time where, hey, man, everyone's going to be able to, everyone's going to be all jabbed up. Everyone's going to be, able to get it,
30% of U.S. adults still don't want to get the COVID vaccine, but they may not have much of a choice.
The federal government can require vaccination and things like that for coming in and out of the country. Both the state and city can have vaccine laws based on their legislative authority.
Requiring a vaccine is a health and safety work rule, and employers can do that.
Bonnie Jacobson knows this all too well. The Brooklyn resident was recently let go from her job after refusing to get inoculated.
I was sitting at home and I all of a sudden just opened an email. I'm sitting on my couch and it said, basically, while we respect your decision at this time, your employment has been terminated.
So can you actually be forced to take the COVID vaccine against your will in the United States?
So you don't think other places are going to start doing that? You don't think other places are going to say, oh, well, my worker doesn't have the vaccine. Oh, well, you got to leave. You don't think other places are going to start doing that? Of course they're going to start doing that.
Vaccine against your will in the United States. To be clear, the White House's chief medical advisor has already said that he doesn't think the federal government will ever make the COVID vaccine mandatory. However, powers at the city and state level, not to mention the legal rights granted to employers under U.S. labor law, may make it pretty difficult for some Americans to evade inoculation against the coronavirus. This isn't as unprecedented as you might think. There are a lot of required inoculations which are easy to take for granted. Just take the chicken pox. All 50 states and the District of Columbia have laws requiring children entering childcare or public schools to have some sort of provable protection against the disease, whether that's a vaccine or evidence of immunity. In fact, schools, from preschool through university, typically require a battery of inoculations before you can step foot on campus.
When I was a health commissioner in Washington, D.C., we had passed laws that required anyone who went to a school to be vaccinated against certain preventable diseases.
There are religious, medical, and philosophical exemptions that vary state by state. But for around 170 years, America's schools have done a pretty thorough job controlling vaccine-preventable disease in the U.S. The very first school vaccination mandate was in Massachusetts back in the 1850s. It was to protect against smallpox transmission. By the start of the 20th century, almost half of all states required students to be vaccinated before matriculating. In the early 1970s, schools with a measles vaccine mandate had incidence rates that were up to 51% lower than states without the laws. And from there, school vaccine mandates expanded over the next few decades. But while schools had been requiring vaccines since the mid-19th century, states didn't explicitly have that same power to roll out universal inoculation rules for all residents for another 50 years. In 1905, the Supreme Court case of Jacobson versus Massachusetts set the legal precedent which now allows states to require vaccines.
The Supreme Court said, yes, you can limit individual rights to protect the public health, and one way you can do it in that case is require vaccination.
We've seen states exercise this authority to varying degrees in the years since. Take, for example, the 2019 measles outbreak in New York.
New York imposed a mandate. It imposed an MMR mandate, but it limited it to the neighborhoods where the measles cases were high, and it was accompanied by a $1,000 fine for those who did not have MMR.
Legal experts say that narrowing the vaccine mandate to particular zip codes made it easier to justify in court rather than a statewide mandate. But critics warn that these types of targeted requirements may lead to discriminatory practices.
In general, these things are done at the state level, but big cities, for example, also have vaccine laws. When I was the city health commissioner in Washington, D.C., although that certainly functions as a state, we also had vaccine laws in Washington, D.C.
So far, no cities or states have made the COVID vaccine mandatory, though some places have started the conversation. In November 2020, the New York State Bar Association recommended making the shot mandatory for all residents except those with a medical exemption. And then, of course, there's the biggest rulemaker of them all, the federal government, which in this case actually has pretty limited powers expressly spelled out in the Constitution.
There isn't in the Constitution the power to protect the public health.
Well, the federal government doesn't mandate vaccines. What they do is they make recommendations.
There are, however, softer powers at the federal level that have been used before to incentivize mass inoculation.
The federal government has acted in the public health in the past using other parts, such as its commerce part. So it could, for example, mandate vaccines before you travel in the interstate channels or before you engage in interstate commerce. If you're a truck driver that drives across state, maybe the federal government can mandate that you'll be vaccinated.
The power of the purse is another key tool in Washington's arsenal.
It can pass a law saying states will give you $3 million if you mandate the vaccine, but that's up to a limit. It can't do it to the degree that's coercive.
The federal government could also, theoretically, impose it as a condition of getting a passport. So states and cities can require vaccines, and the federal government has a lot of influence as well. But the big question is whether the government will actually go through with rolling out a universal mandate.
The first challenge is we won't have enough vaccine doses for people who want them. You can't require vaccines that's not available, that people can't get.
Another major factor to consider, none of the 3 COVID vaccines in circulation here in the U.S. are fully licensed by the FDA. Instead, they are all cleared under something known as an emergency use authorization.
Now, that's how Esau goes, okay? Esau usually is going to try to downplay things, act like, that he's not doing it, but in the background, he is doing it, okay? He's talking about, we can't make it mandatory, but inadvertently, okay, if you don't have the vaccine, okay, there's certain things you really can't do. So you're slowly pushing towards making it mandatory. You're slowly pushing towards, if you don't got the vaccine, you can't do this, you can't do that, can't travel, can't go, like, you to the point where if you don't got the vaccine, you basically can't do anything. So right there, just that in itself, okay, that's making it mandatory. And then eventually you just go flat out and say, hey, man, that's how Esau goes. Here it is, he's just trying to downplay things when he's flat out making it, mandatory.
or an EUA. Until they are officially approved, mandates seem to be off the table. And then there's the even bigger question of enforcement.
Mandates to some degree depend on pretty widespread compliance. You can't enforce a mandate if 40% of your population is fighting back. If the problem is widespread mistrust, mandate won't fix it. You need communication, you need education, you need to earn the people's trust by transparently showing them that the vaccine is safe and effective, by explaining to them the process of approving it and so forth.
And keep in mind, if any city or state did implement a mandate, the kinds of repercussions we're talking about are relatively tame. No one is floating the idea of jail time or coming to your house and holding you down while they administer a shot. Refusal would probably just mean a fine or maybe some sort of other tax or penalty. Experts say
That's still punishment. Okay? That's still punishment. And you tell me they're not gonna say, oh, well, you don't get the vaccine. Well, you might be a danger to some people, so you're gonna have to go to this place. Come on, Esau, don't act like, man, this is flat out playing. He's talking about we're not gonna do the big extreme stuff. But you're the person to say, well, if this person doesn't have it, they're at risk. I'm gonna put them in this concentration camp. I'm gonna put them here. Like you flat out just said that you'll punish people. All right, you flat out just said that. But you see the way he's speaking, he's trying to downplay, like, it's not really a big deal. I'm not really punishing people when you are. And it's gonna make it worse. You can give him fines, taxes, okay, another penalty, okay, flat out, take away different things, okay, that they would want to do, different privileges. Come on, Esau. You're flat out forcing people to get the vaccine. And eventually, you're just going to just go all out, So Esau, it's his witchcraft. It's the way he's speaking that he's making it act as if he's not forcing things, when he's underlyingly forcing things. He's underlyingly punishing you.
may also mean you are barred from entry to concerts or can't book a seat on certain airlines. In Israel, for example,
See, there you go, flat out. Okay.
The implementation, though, might be tough. In Israel, for example, they use the green passport to allow access to businesses like hotels and restaurants to those who have been vaccinated against the virus or have already had COVID-19. Implementation, though, might be tough here in the U.S.
And there you go. See? They couldn't go to certain hotels and whatnot. Whatever. Man, Esau, man, damn liar, man. Okay? That's inadvertently forcing people to get it. And then flat out, you're going to just force people to get it. So, well, if you don't have it, you can't work here. Well, if you don't have it, you can't work here. Do that, This is Psalms 55 and 21. The words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, yet were there drawn swords. So flat out, Esau, man, he's a con artist of his mouth. Okay, he knows how to speak and say things to confuse you and make you think a certain thing when underlyingly he's lying. Underlyingly, it means something else. Okay? All right? He has that craft. He has that ability to do that. Okay? So at the end of the day, Esau, he's pushing towards what? Making it hard to not have that vaccine. Okay, that's what he's pushing towards. That's what he's doing. It's hard to access this, to access that. Okay, plain and simple. Okay. So I hope this was edifying, and shalom.